Now let us know or discover the fragments. Basically, fragments are mini activities that we can integrate into our application. So these fragments are defined separately. So let us know how to define a fragment first. For example, I have defined this intro fragment. Now a very easy way to create a fragment is left clicking on your folder, creating new as you do in the activity, but rather than choosing activity, go to the fragment drop down and click the fragment blank. This will implement most of the methods for you. As you can see here, it has created a fragment file for me by default, and you can do custom changes here as I have done. So basically what I have done in this intro fragment is I have implemented all the listeners. So super.on detach is used whenever you remove a fragment, on attach is used whenever you attach a fragment, and view.onCreate is used whenever the fragment is inflated. OnCreate is used, as I told you, fragment similar to an activity. Now here in the intro fragment I have laid out some text that will tell you that it is the intro fragment. Here also I am not hard coding the text, I am using #string/intro text, which is defined by strings.xml file. Similarly, I have created a browser fragment here so that I can tell you about the fragments. And here on the onCreate view I have defined a web view in my layout file, and also I have enabled a edit text and a button. So basically the layout is like here. And what happens in my browser fragment is, in the onCreate method I get the web view, I get the web settings by calling the web view variable name reference to the web view.getSettings. I set the web view client of this web setting reference as new web view client. Otherwise, whenever I click any link in my web view client, it will open an Android pop-up asking for many browsers. Then I click JavaScript, DOM storage, geolocation, file access to true, and you may set them accordingly. And then I check whether build version.sdk is greater than the build version.cores of Jelly Bean, and then I set the universal access from file URLs and file access from file URLs as true. Then I load by default the URL google.com. Then I get the reference to the edit text element and the button, and then I add a onClick listener to the button. So whenever it is pressed, the web view tries to load the URL. By the load URL method, I am passing the text of the edit text I am receiving by e.getText.toString. I make the web view try to load the URL entered in the edit text element, and if there is any error, it will make a toast accordingly. This was all about the fragment. Now coming back to the main activity, which is implementing the fragment, it must also implement or inherit concessively your respective fragments on fragment interaction listener. So intro f.on fragment interaction listener and browser f.on fragment interaction listener. Then you must declare a fragment manager first, as all the fragment transactions are taken place with the help of fragment manager. In your layout file, you must declare either a fragment directly from the starting, or you may include a frame layout. We can place and replace fragments. So similarly, you can call the fragment manager, and you can get it by calling the get supported fragment manager if you are using android.support.v4.app.fragment manager. If you are using android.app.fragment manager, you will call get fragment manager. Then you can initiate a transaction, because changing of fragments takes place in the initiating of transaction. Since there is no fragment loaded by default, we automatically start a transaction by calling fragment transaction, which is basically the data type of fragment transaction is equal to fragment manager.begin transaction. Then we create a new instance of intro f fragment, and then we call fragment transaction.add r.id of fragment container, which is the layout ID of the container which will hold the fragment. Call the second argument as the newly fragment created, and then call fragment transaction.commit to finally start the transaction. Now whenever you click on the browser button or the intro button in the layout as I specified in my layout file of the main activity, you'll get two buttons, intro browser introduction, which will basically switch the fragments. So fragments enable us to display many different types of sub activities without the user having to leave the activity. The fragments can also have sub activities, but they can interact with other fragments only through the process of main activity. So my browser fragment has to call some method in main activity, and then the main activity will be able to communicate to another fragment. It does not happen directly. Then I also have to represent a public void on fragment interaction taking an argument as URI with any variable name, and this is a must, without which Android will produce an error. Now, whenever I am adding a fragment to an empty fragment container, I will call fragment transaction.add. But when I have to replace a fragment, that is, if there is already a fragment in the fragment container, I will call the replace method instead. So this was all about the fragments. Now see you later for more Android programming tutorials.